I'm ProzaicMuze, bringing you a weapon throw guide for Diablo 3's Barbarian class. This build features both weapon throw and ancient spear to take full advantage of the no escape passive. Here's my version of the weapon throw build and how I configure my ability bar. For the left and right mouse buttons, we have weapon throw with ricochet and ancient spear with harpoon, and then on Q, W, E, and R we have Wrath of the Berserker with slaughter, war cry with impunity, sprint with run like the wind, and battle rage with into the fray. Rounding out the build, we have weapons master and ruthless, with no escape being the foundation for axe chucking goodness. Before moving on, let's talk about rune options such as making weapon throw AoE versus single target, and whether or not to actually use no escape. Impunity used to be the rune for barbarians, but as gear and lower MP levels allow, you can definitely switch it out. I still use impunity though because my health is lower than I'd like and my resistance to armor ratio is perfect for it. Eventually, charge becomes a much more appealing option as better gear tends to make you resistance heavy. It also prevents a specific startup problem regarding battle rage and weapon throw. When you cast Warcry out of combat, your Fury starts to deplete immediately, and this means that the default 20 Fury, which is exactly enough to cast Battle Rage or Weapon Throw, quickly drains before you can do so. Charge provides enough Fury to overcome this issue. Hardened Wrath is even better at balancing your armor with the double armor boost, but it's less effective than Charge unless you make Weapon Throw free to cast or switch to the passive Unforgiving to gain the 2 Fury per second. Invigorate also deserves a mention, but it's more preference than anything else. The flat life regen makes it scale poorly with larger health pools, but the 10% extra life can work well if you are using the passive Inspiring Presence to regenerate 2% of your maximum life per second. Until you can afford to remove the need for Fury, Into the Fray is crucial for spamming weapon throw. With a -5 weapon throw belt, 1 crit every 3 hits, whether that's 3 separate attacks or 3 bounces, is enough to chuck axes indefinitely. This is before considering the passive no escape. When you do move past Fury, Marauder's Rage is the best option for reliably increasing your damage. Even if you're not quite there, it's still a strong option if you decide to drop Ancient Spear in favor of Overpower with Momentum for the 12 Fury per target or any other bulk Fury generator. Ultimately, it's about ensuring that you can use Weapon Throw when you need it. Hypothetically, Bloodshed could provide a larger damage boost than Marauder's Rage, but I'd only recommend it if you have a lot of single target damage. Weapon Throw with Mighty Throw is decent with this. If you already have lots of AoE though, Marauder's Rage is going to be much better. Ignoring Dread Bomb, which I'm going to be making a separate build guide for, Ricochet is the only AoE rune for Weapon Throw. With up to 3 hits per cast, it provides the greatest potential for Fury procs, but can be very unreliable with this low proc coefficient. The slow is also quite nice for keeping most, if not all, of an elite pack at bay. Mighty Throw is the best single target rune, and very reliable as it's guaranteed to proc Fury every time it crits. The slow becomes somewhat pointless though, as you can't keep it active on more than a couple of targets. If boss survivability is a problem or you like playing in a group, Throwing Hammer offers a respectable stun chance and duration. It can be particularly strong if you stack a lot on hit items such as Freeze or Root, as the 100% proc rate means you'll get the full value of those items. Stupefy is more for laughs than it is effective, but with a lot of attack speed, it is a reasonably viable option for weapon throw and also works well with on-hit items. Harpoon is easily my favorite part of this build, even though it's not a part of weapon throw. It is the only rune for Ancient Spear without a target cap, as every other rune maxes out at 1 target with the exception of grappling hooks at 3. With a surprisingly high proc rate, it is quite common to cap your Fear with a single cast. While the tooltip doesn't show this, Ancient Spear also has a 1-second root, meaning that after yanking a large pack of monsters, they're stuck there long enough for you to back out of melee range if you need. In looking at other weapon throw builds, I see Dread Spear being used more than any other rune, Skirmish being the second most, while some don't use Ancient Spear at all. And I find there are much better options. Sure, Dread Spear provides a large burst of healing, but it's nowhere near as spammable as Harpoon with no escape. Sever with any amount of lifesteal also makes Dread Spear pale in comparison to Harpoon, as each killed monster usually heals you to full. If, for whatever reason, you aren't using no escape, the point is moot, as you have better options than Ancient Spear in that situation. Before the nerf in 1.05, Run Like the Wind was a significant source of fury and healing, especially with life on hit. Now it requires lifesteal and or sever to reliably heal you, and it's mediocre at generating fury. I use it primarily to avoid affix death zones, add damage to single targets like bosses, and cruise through trash mobs. Gangway is another way of quickly moving from pack to pack, as you can run through trash mobs rather than around them. You lose the lingering damage and it can't proc Fury though, so it's only worth using if you really want to escape from or run through monsters. Slaughter is my emergency/boss button for ridiculous amounts of burst damage. Each tornado from sprint, each bounce from weapon throw, and each target hit by Ancient Spear can proc the AoE explosion to drastically increase your damage output. Against the standard 3-mob elite pack, Weapon Throw, Ancient Spear, and Sprint can each create 3 explosions at a time, with Sprint being able to create them multiple times with successive crit ticks. A well-aimed Ancient Spear is all you need to get started. Yank 'em, pop Wrath, and kill stuff. For some quick math, 3 explosions is 465% additional weapon damage if they're clumped. That's 2.75 times the damage of Mighty Throw, 3.6 times the damage of Ricochet, 2.5 times the damage of Ancient Spear, and 7.75 times the damage of Sprint. Obviously I'm using perfect world math here, but it's easy to see that the potential for damage is there, and it only gets more ridiculous if you manage to yank trash mobs into the pack. Given the way that I play, I can rarely make Thrive on Chaos work for me, but I know that if you're into highly efficient speedruns, it is possible to maintain a high uptime on Wrath of the Berserker. It's best utilized with reliable Fury generators like Mighty Throw, Bash, Overpower, and Revenge with the appropriate runes. Keep in mind that if you want to use Thrive on Chaos, you should pile up on Fury generation even if you reduce the cost of Weapon Throw to 0. Insanity isn't nearly as strong as Slaughter for this build, but as you swap in single target abilities or runes and when you fight bosses, it becomes a much more appealing option. It is also a reliable crutch when you lack the crit to make Slaughter proc or Thrive on Chaos stick. For passives, Weapon Master and Ruthless are obvious choices given that most variations of this build hinge on a steady stream of crits. Weapons Master also allows the use of mighty weapons if you can't maintain your Fury with an axe or mace. That said, No Escape provides the foundation for this particular build by adding Fury generation of Weapon Throws crits and turning Ancient Spear into a somewhat spammable attack. The proc for resetting Ancient Spear's cooldown is 100% on any crit, meaning that Harpoon is uniquely qualified to hit that button more than any other Ancient Spear rune. I consider this to be the strongest and most important part of the passive. If you aren't going to use Ancient Spear in your build, I'd recommend trading No Escape for Unforgiving unless you can't maintain your Fury with it or you don't need Fury. One important exception is that No Escape will be a stronger option if you want to use Thrive on Chaos, especially with faster attacking speeds. If you're still using Fury and don't want Thrive on Chaos, Unforgiving solves your startup problem by preventing Fury from depleting out of combat. If you don't use Fury, Bloodthirst is a solid passive for increasing survivability. If you have Sever, it allows you to use weapons without lifesteal while still being useful even if you don't. Hitting 12% lifesteal with all possible items can make you very tanky and opens up the option of melee-oriented weapon throw builds. Overall, Weapon Throw provides a great deal of variety given its flexible nature. Now to use my version of this build, there are some important details and strategies that you'll find useful. Earlier I explained how using Warcry out of combat causes your Fury to drain away faster than you can use it to cast Battle Rage. Because of this, it's important not to use it until you're ready to immediately enter combat. Casting it early will force you to use Ancient Spear or auto attacks to get enough Fury for Battle Rage. While I managed to proc the cooldown multiple times here, this won't always be the case and you could find yourself in a room full of people that want to hurt you without a proper means to defend yourself. Once you've jumped the first hurdle, another important detail is the order you rebuff yourself in. When you cast Warcry before Battle Rage, you have a net loss of 20 Fury. It's such a simple thing, but I see many Barbarians making this mistake, regardless of build. Instead, cast Battle Rage first, then Warcry to maintain your Fury. This small detail can be very important if you're lacking the gear for optimal Fury management. Weapon Throw is self-explanatory in that you chuck an axe and something bad dies, but it's worth pointing out that its range extends past the edges of your screen. This makes it pretty amazing for kiting if you find the idea of a Barbarian with brittle bones an appealing option. Unfortunately, the bounce distance of Ricochet isn't nearly as long as its range, but it's enough to hit most things on your screen. Ricochet can also bounce off destructibles to hit monsters, but it can't bounce from mobs to barrels back to mobs. Damage output is also quite nice in that it is more than capable of killing trash and packs without using your other abilities. It doesn't mean you shouldn't use your other abilities, but you definitely don't need to mash your face into your keyboard in a desperate attempt to cast more spells like you're a wizard or something. You can afford to be strategic. Of all the affixes you will face, shielding and waller will be your greatest annoyance as you can't proc Fury off shielded targets and walls block your axes. While you do have to wait out the shields, you can get around walls by hitting monsters on destructibles on your side of the wall. If they are close enough to monsters on the other side, Ricochet will bounce through the wall and hit the target. This only applies to bounces and not the initial throw. Ancient Spear's range isn't as long as weapon throws, but it covers most of the visible screen. Just like weapon throw, you can take advantage of destructibles to both reset the cooldown of Ancient Spear and generate large amounts of fury. This is the best way to maintain fury over large stretches of nothingness like Act 2 or any other target poor environments. Earlier I discussed why I feel Harpoon is the best rune for Ancient Spear, and this is why. Weapon throw is great for killing elite packs, but Ancient Spear is much better at clearing out the squishies in mass. When you're unlucky enough to not proc the cooldown, you can start using weapon throw with all that fury you collected. Or you can just be lucky like me and gleefully spam spears as bodies explode around you. Ancient Spear is also amazing for mugging goblins. You can see the route that the tooltip doesn't mention, as well as the combined slowing effect of weapon throw and Ancient Spear. If a goblin somehow escapes your grasp, you probably died or were looking at porn. Or both. And because Ancient Spear is just so cool, here's an example of consecutive procs against a single target. I bet he wishes his spears could do that. Of course, a more typical encounter is bound to look something like this. And then another dozen axes to the face to finish him off. Anyone who has a Barbarian should know what sprint looks like. After all, you're lying if you said that you didn't try to double tornado at least once. I am invincible! The important thing is knowing how big of a circle you need to make for tornadoes to actually form. The waypoint is a great reference for the size of the circle, the inner edge being too small and the outer edge being just right. Knowing this, it's entirely possible to down bosses using sprint and slaughter alone. This is one of the reasons whirlwind barbs used Run Like the Wind in the first place. It's not the best way to kill bosses, but it mixes well with weapon throw and Ancient Spear. You really get a good feeling for this with what I like to call the yank and spank. Sprint lays down tornadoes that deal damage when you pull mobs through them with Ancient Spear. The root traps them while you sprint away again, usually stuck in a newly formed tornado, and you repeat the process until your cooldown gives out. The only important thing to know about Slaughter is that you should wait to use it until your fury is full. By waiting for full fury, you avoid casting it and having no fury to do anything with. Women don't like it, and neither do monsters. Performance is everything. Combined with the previous abilities, you can dispatch elites very quickly. I typically try to position myself to yank them into a clump before popping Wrath, but it's not really a requirement. While I lack the health to venture into the higher monster power levels, I recommend picking your monster power level based on whether or not you can kill most elites before Slaughter wears off. If it wears off and they're not below 25% health, you should probably drop a level for the sake of efficiency. Certain affixes like Shielded and Extra Health are obviously going to take longer to kill, so you can ignore them when considering your monster power level. I currently swap between two weapon sets based on what act I'm running and how lazy I feel. For Acts 1 and 3, I use a main hand axe with the 300th Spear Legendary for the massive bonus that it gives to Ancient Spear and weapon throw damage. I have very average life regen, lifesteal, and life on hit, but I do enough damage to keep myself alive if I'm careful not to derp in the fire. After all, I need that DKP to buy upgrades from the auction house. For Monster Power 1, 5 to 600 resistances and 5 to 6k armor is usually plenty, provided that you have 35,000 or more health. Stat-wise, I'd say I could jump into Monster Power 3, but the Andariel's Vicious that I'm wearing is going to be holding me back until I could get one with lower fire or a different helm altogether. 40,000 plus health is usually ideal if you're using Andariel's. For Acts 2 and sometimes 3, I use a main hand mighty weapon and Sever. I lose a lot of the bonus damage, but I keep some of it when fighting demons. I have a bit more life and lower defensive stats, but the Sever proc is more than enough to keep me alive with the extra lifesteal. I'm much less likely to die to fire, but it takes longer to kill things. I have Warcry and Battle Rage active for both sets of stats, but not Wrath of the Berserker. You want to have 40% or more crit before Wrath so that you'll break that 50% when it's active. Whether you want to use Life on Hit or Lifesteal is up to you, but Lifesteal usually works better with Sever, and Life on Hit works better with attack speed and single target runes like Mighty Throw. All of the items for both sets are the same except for the mentioned weapons. To look at the individual items I'm wearing, check either link in the description box below. They will take you to d3up.com where every freaking stat you could ever imagine is provided for my builds. Seriously, every freaking stat. Here's various gameplay featuring both sets of weapons while I talk about what's in store for my channel. For those of you discovering me for the first time, I have 8 level 60 characters spread across all classes. I specialize in unorthodox, or what I lovingly call suboptimal builds, for the sole purpose of sticking it to the man. Chances are, if you think a build sounds stupid, I'll make it work or make a fool of myself trying. You get to save your gold for more logical endeavors, and I get to have fun experimenting. I'll be rotating through each of the classes in alphabetical order unless I feel particularly proud of a new build I've discovered. That means that unless things change, the next 2 quirky builds will feature the Demon Hunter and the Monk. Diablo 3 isn't the only game I play, and as time permits, I'll be covering games like Borderlands, Torchlight, and League of Legends. If there's dirt to be found, I'll find it. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe and throw me any feedback in the comments on my first serious effort on the YouTubes.